All right. How's everyone doing tonight? Sorry, it is a little bit later than normal. Yeah, 8:30. I'm not sure. Okay, one second. Saying my audio stream current bit rate is lower. Okay. Can everybody hear me just fine? Let me check the audio really quickly. It's saying, maybe that's a false alarm. I think the audio is fine. Okay, let's move on. All right. As I was saying, how are you guys doing today? Sorry, it's a little bit later today. I was actually on a mountain and got back much later than I expected. This is the first time I left my house in like a year, and so I went to be by myself on a mountain, which was quite fantastic. I enjoyed it quite a bit. All right, let's get into the news. So, the very first thing we're going to talk about is a security issue that hopefully all of you have seen by now. That's not right at all. Here we go. All right. So hopefully you guys have seen this. If you run VMware, thanks for letting me know the audio is okay. If you run VMware, you should be aware of this. There is a code execution flaw in the Esxi, and yeah, it's been out. There is a patch for it though, so just as if you do run it, there is a patch. So go out there and patch your VMware for this execution. It is a high severity issue, and there are already people that are executing on it. So make sure that you're out there and getting it patched. It's a 9.8 out of 10 on the critical. So, yep, make sure you get it patched. I will make sure this link to the patch is in the description as soon as this video is done. So anyways, I just want to make sure you guys were aware of that right from the get-go. All right, let's move on to Kubernetes, because we cover a lot of Kubernetes news, and you know what? Google introduced something that I thought was kind of interesting. Google has, for the longest time, had what I consider some of the best Kubernetes support in their Gke engine. And this week, they released Gke Autopilot. So not only is it managed Kubernetes, but Gke Autopilot manages the operations of your Kubernetes clusters for you. So here is kind of the introduction here. And it's a new mode for operating your Kubernetes clusters. I need to go in and explore it thoroughly myself and understand it all a little bit better. Because I was on a mountain, I didn't actually have the time to explore it completely. But this looks very, very interesting because basically they remove the control plane from you, like some others have done in the past, like DigitalOcean's Kubernetes offering. So they're still going to offer the normal GKE, but this appears to be basically kind of adopting the same operation that DigitalOcean would do, and obfuscating all of that from you. So I'm really interested in getting my hands on with it, getting a little experience, seeing if it operates the same way as DigitalOcean's, and seeing what they bring to it. But basically, you do lose some of the control of your Kubernetes cluster, but you also gain the ability to have Google manage that all for you, which is pretty cool. So you'll probably get to see a video on that shortly. Yeah, anyways, I thought it was interesting. You guys should check it out. It gets the same SLA as their current ones. So yeah, it seems like really good, because that's one of the things DigitalOcean has a little bit of lacked, is their SLA. It isn't quite as good as some of the GKE or AKS or EKS offerings. So. All right, let's go here. This was a really interesting blog article that I like to read because it's Linux versus Unix. I know some people throw this around and some people don't really understand the history of it. And this article did a really good job of laying out all of the history. Maybe not all the history, but a lot of the history. It summed it up really well. So if you're ever wondering what's the difference between Unix and Linux and the beginnings of it, here is a really great article that kind of sums it up at a high level. And so anyways, some of you that aren't as familiar might find that interesting. All right. Because we were talking a lot about security with the the VMware security, I thought that it would be good to point out Google actually funds 2 Linux developers to focus on the Linux kernel for exclusively on security. First, I was like, oh, this is really cool. Second, I was like, first, only 2, and it's only now that we've gotten Google to invest 2 developers for security. I mean, it's good. I'm just surprised that this is the first time. That Google is underwriting 2 full-time Linux security maintainers. It's really awesome that they're doing it. This seems like something that should have been done 5 years ago, since a lot of the internet runs on Linux, and Google themselves use a lot of Linux. So another interesting article that I came across was this Git Lab and Nomad. Now, we've been talking about GitOps on my channel, and I love this because while I don't do a whole lot with Nomad, it was just another example of, remember in my GitOps video when I mentioned that GitOps didn't require Kubernetes, and some people like Weaveworks would state that GitOps required Kubernetes, like that was one of the key things. And my point was that Git was. This was a really cool article about doing GitOps in HashiCorp's Nomad, and so I really like that one because it kind of validated what I had said, and I always like a little bit of validation. But 2, it's just an interesting way of how you can use a different tool, a different technology to achieve the same goal. So if you're a GitOps fan, I suggest you take a look at it, and watch the video. Even if you don't plan on using Nomad, it explains some stuff in a really cool way. Openshift 4.7, so if you're watching the Kubernetes release 120, which was released in December, I have the release notes out there. They released Openshift 4.7, which is the Openshift version that supports 120 that was released in December. So if you're a Openshift user, you now have access to an Openshift distribution that supports the features of 120. So any of the features in the release notes that we talked about would be available in this 4.7 release of Openshift. They did some other things. There's actually, if you read through their release notes, which I haven't gotten through all of them, but there were some things that were going to support GitOps better. And so, yeah, you should, if you're an Openshift user, you should definitely check it out. I'm not an Openshift user, so probably have checked it out about as much as I will in the foreseeable future. All right, let's talk about a little bit more security. Microsoft opened source their CodeQL, which is basically their SolarWinds or the Solargate attack from SolarWinds, basically the tool they're using to look for vulnerabilities. And if you remember what the Solargate attack was, it is a supply chain attack on SolarWinds. So CodeQL is what they're using themselves to locate any vulnerable pieces of code, and they open sourced it for pretty much everybody to use and to adopt and to help use. So basically, yeah, if you guys think that you might have some SolarWinds vulnerabilities, it's definitely a project to check out. If nothing else, it could help you figure out some of that stuff. And for the last bit, I wanted to show a open source project here that just went into the CNCF. So I know that we talk about open source projects every once in a while. Falco is a container native security runtime, or I guess runtime security. It's security, and it's by Sysdig. I don't know if you guys know what Sysdig does, but one of the greatest things that I love about Sysdig is they release a Kubernetes release notes overview blog post every single release notes that is fantastic. Maybe not as good as my videos, but second to my videos only. So they definitely release a lot of great stuff, and they have open sourced and contributed to the CNCF the Falco project. So if you don't know what Falco is, it's right here. This is basically a cloud native security runtime to help protect your clusters. So if you're wanting to, if you run stuff and are worried about security, it's definitely something to check out. And so I don't know if you guys all know about it, but since we've talked about a lot of security stuff this week, because there was a lot of security stuff that happened, this is definitely worth checking out. All right, that is it for today. I apologize if it's a little bit shorter than normal. I kind of took a vacation this weekend, and yeah, but those were the top things that I saw happening this week, and those were the big things. Basically, make sure that you have patched your VMware servers if you have them, because that is like the biggest pressing things. There are people actively out there looking to take advantage of that. Other than that, check out Google's new Kubernetes. Their fully managed Kubernetes service. It's really interesting on how that's going, and I plan on next week for the news actually giving you guys some of my first thoughts. You know, not a full video on it, but by that time I will have used it some. I think they released it Friday, so I was on a mountain. I haven't gotten to fully utilize it yet. But by next week, I'll give you guys some of my first thoughts on it and let you know what I think. Other than that, let me know if you guys have anything else that you want me to cover. Give me some shouts out if you have created a project that is either open source, part of the CNCF, or are part of a CNCF project. You don't even have to have created it, but would like a shout out because maybe people don't know what it is. I'd love to cover more of those projects in this news section. So let me know. Thank you guys for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Next week should be at the usual time. I don't have any plans for anything next weekend, so next week I'll see you guys at the regular time. Thank you very much, and have a fantastic week.